I'd like to start with our next paper for the evening. It's a multi-authored paper to be presented by teacher Portia, and it is on book leveling.
Hi, I'm Portia Padilla from the University of the Philippines. On behalf of my co-authors, let me talk to you about Of Heights and Limits, a children's book leveling experience. Reading involves the interacting variables of the reader, the activity, and the text, all embedded within a sociocultural context. Reader factors include prior knowledge and motivation. Activity-related factors include grouping and purpose. Genre and structure are connected to the text, while the school and the community are connected to the sociocultural context. The interaction between the reader and the text is a key component of the reading process. Connected to this interaction is the importance of matching the reader and the text, whether it be in terms of what text is at the child's independent, instructional, or frustration level, as Betts forwarded in the 1940s, or whether it is about making a child read the text based on the Goldilocks rule, or something just right, not too hot or too cold, or rather, not too difficult or too easy, as what Olhausen and Jepsen asserted. Though the Goldilocks rule has not been empirically tested, practitioner usage is widespread because it is clearly useful in libraries and classrooms. Due to the desire to match readers and texts in aid of facilitating the reading process, books have been leveled. Now let's talk about book leveling. One of the heights of book leveling is the existence of text complexity models that can guide the book leveling process. Among such models is the United States Common Core Standards model, which has 3 dimensions: qualitative, quantitative, and reader and task dimensions. Qualitative factors include levels of meaning, purpose, structure, language conventionality and clarity, and knowledge demands, which are all judged by an attentive and competent human reader. Quantitative factors include word length or frequency, sentence length, and text cohesion. Quantitative measurement of text complexity is now made possible through computer software. For readability, for example, you have Flesch Kincaid, Dale Scholl, Lexile, and for text cohesion, you have the Cometrics of the University of Memphis. Reader and task factors are assessed by teachers using their professional judgment or experience and knowledge of their own students, because these include factors like the reader's motivation, knowledge, and experience, and task-specific variables like purpose, assigned task, and questions posed. Like the model in the U.S. Common Core Standards, Murphy's text complexity model also includes a dimension on the reader and the reading task, which has factors connected to the reader's knowledge, commitment to a task, interest and experiences, and the purposes of particular reading engagements. Aside from this are 2 other dimensions, one being the surface features like vocabulary, sentence length, images, relation to oral language, and density of concepts, and finally, the deeper features like ideation, organization, structure, concepts, and representational modes. Book leveling has its limits too, like the potential to lessen children's exposure to diverse texts and learning experiences. Teachers and adults could limit children's reading experience to books at their level, whether or not the children are interested in the books. So children end up reading less instead of reading more. But they have to read more to read better. There is also the danger of oversimplifying reading, which is an inherently complex, interactive, transactive process. The interest and identity of readers, the subject matter and theme of texts, the physical setting and sociocultural context of the reading activity, as well as the interactions between and among these variables, are not adequately accounted for by generalized book levels. Reading is a sociocultural activity, yes. However, it is also a personal activity. So no one readability measure or leveling system will be appropriate to all readers and all books. And connected to this is the gap in the book leveling literature, which is Anglo-centric or English-focused, and weird too, or centered on the experience of Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic populations. In view of the aforementioned, the present study sought to answer these questions. 1. What qualitative book leveling tool and guidelines can be used in both Canada and Filipino and across publishers? And 2. Will the results be validated using quantitative measures? Canada uses an alpha syllabary, which is a type of writing system whose basic characters denote consonants followed by a particular vowel, and in which diacritics denote other vowels. Particular vowel is the inherent or implicit vowel, while explicit vowels are marked by the diacritics. Kannada is the official and administrative language of the state of Karnataka in the southwestern region of India. On the other hand, Filipino uses the Latin alphabet and has a generally transparent orthography. It is the national language of the Philippines and is also its official language, along with English. In the children's book publishing industry, in both India and the Philippines, there is a strong presence of one dominant publisher, Pratham in India and Adarna House in the Philippines. It has been observed that in the last decade or so, there has been a boom in the children's book publishing industry in both countries. To answer those questions, there was a need to 1. Prepare the book leveling tool and guidelines, 2. To select the books, and of course 3. To actually level the books. Preparing the book leveling tool and guidelines entailed 6 steps: the review of the literature, the drafting of the tool and guidelines, peer review, revision, tryout, and finalization. The study targeted books for children 3 to 10 years old, and the book leveling tool considered 4 age bands: Level 1 for 3 to 5 years, Level 2 for 6 to 8 years, Level 3 for 9 to 10, and the last level for 11 years and older. The tool considered different features or dimensions. As you can see in this slide, for content, reader-related factors like interest and background knowledge were taken into consideration. And overall, for content, factors included what are considered as the deeper features of text complexity. As shown in this slide, another dimension in the book leveling tool is the organization of ideas. And the factors connected to it all fall under the deeper features of text complexity. In addition, this particular component of the tool recognizes the diversity in text type and structure. Another dimension considered in the book leveling tool is the language of the text. As shown in this slide, the factors connected to language are a combination of both the surface and deeper features of text complexity. The tool also considered the less verbal and more visual component of books, particularly illustrations and design. As shown in this slide, you can say that the factors connected to this component belong to the more surface features of text complexity. Though the previous slides show that the books were rated on distinct dimensions, the tool also called for a more holistic rating of the book in its entirety. The guidelines have a typically developing child as target reader. A book for a 3 to 5-year-old is for read aloud, while one for a 6-year-old child or older is for independent reading. For books at the borderline, the lower age band is applied if the content, organization, and language are not very demanding, where the illustrations and book design clearly support comprehension. The most important guideline, however, is that the rating is aspirational. A best-case scenario for the child: a well-resourced environment with an adult to help in the learning process. This is important to note because reading, as said earlier, is a sociocultural as well as a personal activity, with no one readability measure or leveling system being appropriate to all readers and all books. The models of reading and text complexity cited earlier recognize the importance of the reader, task, and context variables. These models come from Anglo-centric and weird perspectives. However, the present study has a low to middle income, or LMI context, where many children live in poverty, have low exposure to print, and demonstrate below-level reading skills. There would be discrepancies between what could be the reality for children in our setting and what is aspirational. However, an aspirational rating can serve as a goalpost, which educational stakeholders, like teachers and curriculum developers, can use in scaffolding and optimizing the reading process within children's zone of proximal development. Also included among the guidelines are exclusion criteria found in this slide. Note that the target readers are children 3 to 10 years old. Note as well that many books in the 1990s and earlier were comparatively of poor paper quality and illustration compared to books in more recent times. Before, it was newsprint, now it's book paper, and before, there was not much use of mixed media and computer-aided design. However, these books were not automatically excluded in consideration of the state of the child publishing industry at the time of publication. However, excluded books include a Canada essay with the theme of meditation that was so abstract that even 10-year-old children would not be able to comprehend it quite well. And in Filipino, a story about a child sexually abused by her own father was excluded. In selecting the books, priority was given to award-winning titles at 5 to 10%, best-selling titles in the last 10 years at 5 to 10%, and those recommended by people who work with children. Coverage-wise, the target was diversity and variety, though no particular percentage was targeted. People who have experience with children's books and with children were selected as raters. They went through an orientation or practice leveling session before they independently rated the books. Disagreements in rating were resolved through discussion. In Filipino, discussion usually revolved around readers' familiarity with content and vocabulary, while in Canada, discussion revolved around concept load, sentence complexity, and whether illustrations support the text. Strategies that were used to resolve disagreements included reviewing the book and comparing it against others that have been assigned to the same age or category, and even exchanging notes regarding one's experiences raising their own children and or teaching young children. Results show that in both languages, all the titles were recommended, and the award-winning titles and best-selling titles met the target percentages. In both languages, the books were published in different decades. Consistent with what was mentioned earlier, in both languages, a big percentage of the books were published by the dominant children's book publisher in the country. In both languages, the largest percentage of the books were rated for 6 to 8-year-old children. Quantitatively, results show that in both languages, there is an increasing word count and an increasing sentence count across book levels. Moreover, in both languages, there is a positive correlation between age of acquisition rating and book level, with words coming from higher book levels being rated as later acquired. In summary, these can be considered the heights of the book leveling experience. First, the tool and the guidelines worked across two linguistically distinct languages, and second, the qualitative results were validated by quantitative measures. In particular, the average word count and the average sentence count increased across book levels, and the words in books for older children were rated as later acquired. On the other hand, limits include the following. First, the tool and the guidelines did not adequately cover the diversity of reader-specific and task-specific variables. Second, the books were not analyzed for coverage of topics, themes, and genres, and the results were not validated by children's actual reading. Again, note that reading is both a sociocultural as well as a personal activity, so no one readability measure or leveling system will be appropriate to all readers and all books. So there's room for further research where these limits are concerned. Among the implications of this study are, first, the potential for using book levels in the development of assessment and instructional materials. Second, the need for balance in the use of qualitative and quantitative measures when matching readers and books. And finally, the importance of professional judgment in leveling books, particularly in terms of knowing the readers, the books, and the reading context. Thank you and happy reading.
It appears to me that expert leveling is mirrored by the psycholinguistic qualities of the stories that were assessed using the AOA as well as the um, Sukatwika and other tools that we use for counting the words and the sentences in books. We have one question um, from Joyce Marzan. She asks that you mentioned the quality, the actual quality of paper and durability of the book as a factor. Her question is, how might this affect the child's motivation to read at various reading levels?
Among the guidelines cited, one of the items in the exclusion criteria had something to do with book design. Though we admit that the more visual aspects of a book, the more surface aspects of the book have a bearing on a child's interest, a child's motivation to read or not to read the book, we also recognize that one limitation of the study is that we did not go to the extent of actually making children at a particular age level read a book or two that has been leveled or rated for that particular age band. All these things, all the things connected to book leveling happened during a very strict lockdown. But yes, Dr. Marzan, it would be very interesting to see how the books would be received and would be read and understood by children, which the levelers, the raters of the books, rated the books as appropriate for.
I was just wondering, maybe if you would consider a future follow-up study, maybe that could strengthen the validity of your book leveling measures, your book leveling protocol. I wonder if it would work to also level the books using the what you call the weird protocols, because even if they're not exactly fit with our context, we might still get a leveling that's in the same direction, kind of, and that could give additional validation to your tool.
Yes, that is a possibility, Dr. Marzan. Note, however, that the literature that we reviewed to help us draft the tool and the guidelines predominantly came from Anglo-centric and weird tools and guidelines. And we had a few coming from India and the Philippines, but not as much as admittedly those coming from the weird models, perspectives, and examples. But yes, we will keep that in mind, and also probably to further refine the tool, we can go even more quantitative and um, try to rate some more, and this time be more strict about inter-rater reliability and all the computations and numbers that go with it.